and services for their citizens, but it's also going to provide, especially this year when you're seeing value increases because of COVID not having impact on real estate values until after January 1st, you're going to have increasing tax bills on citizens when there's maybe one of the spouses has been asked to be furloughed, or maybe even been let go from a company, or has been taken, or has been said, you know, we need you to take less salary to continue to work here. So there's real concerns on both sides of it. I'm just saying, I think the message today is the one quick action you can take is to file a protest. Let everything else work itself out. Let the taxing jurisdictions, let the legal battles play themselves out. But there's one thing you have direct control over, and that's protesting your value. The deadline in Collin County is going to be June 15th, and in Denton County, this is wrong. It's actually May 29th. At Dallas, it's June 15th as well. Rockwall's already passed, and Tarrant is going to be June 1st. So the deadlines are all over the board this year. It used to be May 15th last year, but everything's delayed because of COVID. So if you're in Collin, it's going to be June 15th. And again, if you're in Denton County, it's going to be May 29th. I've already covered this, that the most direct impact you have is protesting your value, but I'm going to talk to you today about how to do it the right way, which is being evidence-based with your appeal. So let's not just file an appeal and then forget about it and let it go. In order to be effective, you have a little bit of work you have to do on your end to make the protest go in more of your favor. There's two sets of decision makers when you file a protest. One of them is the appraisal district appraiser. So you file an online protest and you submit evidence with that. That gives the district appraiser an opportunity to review your evidence and review your case, and then they can offer you a reduction in the value. So the district appraiser is a decision maker. If that doesn't go your way, if you don't like how the district appraiser, the value that they come in with, or if you think that it's not strong enough, then you can go on to what's called the appraisal review board, and sometimes it's referred to as ARB as short. So, and those are just regular tax-paying citizens. They're not associated with the appraisal district. A lot of people get intimidated by the appraisal review board. A lot of people confuse the ARB as having to go to court. It's not anything quite close to being that formal of a process. You are sworn in when you go to the ARB, but that's about it. Just keep in mind, these are just regular tax-paying citizens like you and me. They're not out to get you. They're not out to hold value as high as possible. They're really there to just kind of be a referee in the process between you and the appraisal district, and they're going to hear both sides of the case and make a determination at that point.
Will this be done in person or virtually?
That is a little bit up in the air right now. We think, and so Dallas has been really the first one to move out on that. And they're the ones that are saying right now we're going to try to do everything by teleconference. But all the other appraisal districts have kind of sat back and waited on that. There's another complication in that, and that there was an opinion offered by Ken Paxton, our Attorney General, who basically he was asked, are citizens going to be forced to waive their right to appear in person at an ARB hearing? And it looked like he said that no, that they're not going to be forced to waive their right for that. So that could extremely delay the process because they're not going to just say, oh, okay, well, there's other guidelines in place too, like for safety right now, where you're at a restaurant, you can only be 25% occupied. So it's not going to be normal business at the ARB. I think what they're going to try to do is give you the option of, you've got this option to do a teleconference ARB hearing and get it over with sooner, or you can opt out of that and we're going to figure it out later on in the year. So that's kind of my best answer to that right now. I don't really think that they have a great solution for that because there's going to be a lot of legal issues that are brought up with rights as citizens being able to appear in person at an ARB hearing. I did see one comment about that the ARB is paid for their service by the appraisal district. That's absolutely correct. That's part of the budget that the appraisal district has. And you're not wrong in thinking that that's a tie to the appraisal district. I will say this about that though, that there is a firewall between the between the appraisal district and the ARB. that the ARBs, first of all, they're overseen by a county judge, not by so the appraisal district doesn't hire them, a county judge hires them. It's in their it's in the appraisal district's budget to pay for the ARB. However, if you ask any chief appraiser of an appraisal district, they are dying to unbundle that burden from their budget. They would rather push that onto somebody else. It's a burden to them. They are forced to do it. Now, having said all that, they're also drinking their coffee, eating their donuts, and chit-chatting with them. So there is some proximity and familiarity that is concerning, but I can just tell you that I don't think that there's anything systematically nefarious about anything going on. I think it's just kind of human nature that you have familiarity with somebody, working with them and chit-chatting with them, that you could maybe make the argument for some sort of bias. But I really do think that the ARBs, especially in Collin County, I do think the ARBs really try to play it straight. And I think that the chief appraiser at Collin County tries to keep his business out of their business as well. So yeah, but point well taken. I hope I covered the counter side to that, but I don't think you're completely wrong for pointing that out. My website is PropertyTax.io, and we're known for our instant and free analysis. All you have to do is type in your address, and we provide you, we run recent sales in the area, and we adjust them through the appraisal district's system so that you can get a good indication as to what information might work for you as far as recent sales, if it's going to help or hurt your case. It's the most common way to file an appeal that we see is to use recent sales in your area. Another common way to file an appeal is to argue the condition of your property. So if you've got outdated appliances, you can use that kind of information to get the value lowered as well. I've done this for a long time, and when I was first starting out, I was really frustrated with how the appraisal districts had these systems where they could just, in the click of a button, punch out the evidence that they needed to support a higher value. Or I was going in there with a certain set of assumptions about a property that I was going to use as evidence. They would run it through their system and they would make these adjustments to it, and it would actually come out to be higher than what I thought it was going to be. And the frustration that caused for me was that now I'm having to scramble, and this plan that I was going in there with is just kind of blown up in the click of a mouse. And so I set out to how can I better prepare for these situations? How can I be more accurate with my plan? How can I go in there thinking that this comp is going to work and it actually does work for me, instead of constantly being surprised and then having to scramble with, okay, what do I do now? Having to think on my feet as much. I went to Texas A&M, graduated from there. I see on TexAgs, which is a online forum, that property tax is a hot topic there. And this just kind of emulates what I was just saying. This guy's in Harris County. And he said that basically I went in there with the house out of the same floor plan in the same neighborhood. And I thought it was going to produce an $11,000 reduction. But when they run it through their adjustments, it equals pretty much my value. So I see that a lot, and that's really the problem that PropertyTax.io solves, is that we have kind of reverse engineered the appraisal district's systems so that you're accurate going in there thinking that this comp is going to help you. It actually does help you get the value reduced, because there's nothing worse when you go in there with evidence you think is going to help you, and then it ends up not helping you, because now it's kind of like, well, in the appraisal district's mind, they're kind of like, well, what are you in there disputing now that we've run this through all of our adjustments and it doesn't play out the way that you thought? This is what our evidence looks like. And I'm not trying to make this a commercial for what I do. We have designed a report based on years of experience that we think works. So you don't have to necessarily use my report to do this. You can just pop open a Microsoft Word document and follow these general principles to get it to work for yourself. I suggest starting off with an executive summary. I think the biggest mistake I see a lot of people make when they do an appeal themselves is that they're not clear and concise up front about what they're asking for and why they're asking for it. And that makes a decision maker's job, whether it be an appraisal district appraiser or an ARB panel member, it makes their job a lot harder to try to be a mind reader as to understand what you're asking for and why you're asking for it. So an executive summary is a great opportunity to do that. Tell them, here's my opinion of value, and then tell them why this is my opinion of value. In this case, we're saying we're using sales comparison analysis and recent sales in the neighborhood, that kind of thing. Just a quick paragraph about why you're basing your value off. I looked at recent sales in my neighborhood. I'm making some adjustments for that, and this is why I think the value should be 462,000, for instance. You know, in our reports, we include a lot of maps because the district appraiser is also going to have like a lot of mapping in their system. And so we found that a lot of times that they would use maps as a way to gain credibility and talk about your property in ways that you couldn't talk about it visually. So if you're in an ARB hearing, they're bringing up all these maps. I think one thing you can do is just kind of take a big zoomed out level of where your property is, so that if I'm on an ARB panel, or maybe I'm a district appraiser, I can quickly, easily, and tell geographically where your property is, because maybe I know where that is, and I have a general sense of where you're talking about where your property is versus just an address that means nothing to me. You know, I know major roads and things like that, so now I've got a good sense of where you're located. There's information that we pull through open record that a lot of people miss that really comes back and bites them, and that's this additional improvements section. That includes things like attached garages, and really the kicker is like covered porches and patios. You'd be surprised at the values that appraisal districts assign to line items like that. In this case, it equals well over $10,000 in value. So going back to that slide where the guy from A&M was disputing his value, and he said they make all these adjustments and it comes out to be 11,000 higher than I thought it would. A lot of that comes from the additional improvement line items that you aren't accounting for. Maybe you've got a 3-car garage and a comp has a 2-car garage. Well, there's going to be an adjustment that needs to be made for that. Maybe you have a covered back porch and the other comp only has a front entry porch, but not a back porch. That could be $5,000 right there. So it's kind of death by 1,000 paper cuts with these additional improvements where people get off on their value. I see a lot. Again, we provide a lot of maps. So the first map you saw was of the subject property, kind of zoomed out, that shows here's the big picture of where I'm located. If you're going to use recent sales, you know, maybe go to Google Maps and drop some pins in where the sales are located and print that out to show, okay, I'm using comps that are all really close to me, or maybe they're even on the same street. You can just see that they're geographically close to your property. We provide 2 different views to look at the comps. One is kind of like a quick, which is a table. And we kind of like a lot of appraisal districts speak in there. So we have like what's called like a neighborhood code. So appraisal districts assign neighborhood codes to your property. A lot of times in Collin County and in Denton County, it correlates with a master plan community's phase. So phase 1 will be one neighborhood code. Phase 2 will be a different neighborhood code. And so you're showing with this information, you're pulling kind of an apples to apples comparison of comps. There could be differences in building quality ratings or year built between different phases of properties, even though they're all in the same master plan community. Phase 1 might be more entry level pricing, and might, you know, and they get to phase 3. Well, obviously some time's passed, and so they might bump up the pricing points on phase 3. So they're going to use higher quality construction materials, things like that. And so if you don't have access to our systems or open records requests like we do, one of the things that you can do instead of using the neighborhood code and the building quality code is that you can just say the name of your neighborhood. Say I'm in such and such neighborhood phase 1, and then say that this comp is also from such and such neighborhood phase 1, and then go down the line. The building quality rating correlates with the quality of construction of the property. So I know in Collin County, they don't make that data point available on the website. And so what you can do is you can scroll down and go to the deed history of that property. And one of the first owners of that property is going to be the builder. And so a lot of times the quality of construction is going to correlate with the builder. So if you don't want to go to the trouble of doing the open records and all that, you can just scroll down and see, okay, I'm using all Dries homes, for instance. Like I'm a Dries, I was built by Dries, and all the comps are built by Dries. And that at least shows that you're doing your homework and you're doing a level of research that's way far beyond what most people do. And again, we make all that super easy in my application, and we actually translate it from here's a Dries to here's an RF12, which is the actual building quality rating that they have rated for a specific property. But right now, you've heard me speak a lot about all of the complexities of the system and the adjustments, the calculations, and all that kind of stuff. Well, to some extent, you can take a lot of what I've said and kind of, it's good to know. But I'm here to tell you that don't get nervous about all of that complexity that I've talked about, because the biggest advantage that you have is that you know way more about your property than anybody else. And I've seen time after time, people have been successful using relatively simple methodologies to get a reduction because they're showing the appraisal district how their database is wrong. And so, and I'm gonna get into detail about what I mean by that in a second. Here's a headline that I kind of picked up from that. This was from a few years ago. Here's how I knocked $13,000 off my property tax appraisal in 30 minutes. It was written by Leona Allen from the Dallas Morning News. She didn't use PropertyTax.io, but we used her workflow and built it into our tool. It inspired us to build that into our tool. So what she did was she filed an online protest. She got a realtor friend to get a list of comparable sales. And then she went an additional step that I see a lot of people don't do, was that she went onto sites like Zillow or Trulia and got photos of the sales. And then she went into her hearing with the district appraiser, and she said that they lowered the value to the average of the recent sales. Now, when somebody like me looks at this process, it's real easy for me to see points that she may have missed that could have produced a better outcome for her. But what I want to, the general point I want to get across is this is a relatively easy process, and she found success with it. So, could she have gotten 30,000 off? Like, maybe, I don't know. I'd have to look at her specific case, but there's a few things that I would have looked at differently that maybe could have produced a better outcome for her. But if you just kind of want to do something quick and easy, this is really not that complicated to do. And she saw good results with that.
So Glenn, she knocked $13,000 off. What does that do for her? How does that, what money does that translate to in saved taxes?
That translates to roughly $300 in taxes. Yeah. And I saw, oh, go ahead.
And I mean, I have seen many times where that value might stick for a year or two. So yes, that could be, that 30 minutes could turn into a $300 savings, or maybe even a $600 savings if it sticks for a couple of years. Right. Plus it sets a lower base for the next year. So
I saw a question I wanted to answer real quick about determining the value of the additions. They list the additions on the website, like Debbie was saying, but they don't actually list the value that they're associating with the addition. So they'll just say attached garage, 400 square feet, but they won't actually list the value that they're assigning to that. The way that we get that from Collin County is through a very complex open records request. Making the request is not difficult, but being able to parse the file, it comes from a mainframe, it's fixed width. It would take you, the average person could not do this. Get that information really. I mean, the way that we get it. Now, having said that, you can request this information specifically for your property when you file the protest. You can say, when requesting the appraisal district's evidence, and then they will have to list out all the comps that they're using for you and the additional improvements with that. But you won't know that until you request the evidence from the appraisal district. If you want to be proactive and know that before you request it from the appraisal district, that involves a very complex open records request. Now, if you want to make a guess about something, again, let's not overly complicate it. You can go on their district website and you can see attached garage, 400 square feet. Okay, I have an attached garage and I also have 400 square feet. So you know that there probably shouldn't be an adjustment for that. But if you see that they have a larger, or if you have a larger attached garage, for instance, then you know that there needs to be some sort of adjustment for that. So I'm going to show you real quick the video that shows how we built Leona's workflow, how you can use photos to beat the appraisal district system. And this is what we have built into our system, but you can also do this process again, kind of how Leona did it. So you can use photos to say things like, this comp's kitchen is nicer than my kitchen. So we make all the photos available there. You can upload a photo of your own kitchen. And what you're doing now is a side-by-side comparison of your kitchen and the comp's kitchen. And so you would say it would take me $25,000 to make my kitchen look that nice. And so what you're doing there is you're overriding the appraisal district's condition adjustment, and you're making your own condition adjustment, and you're using photos to prove that to them. So the photos are not, that's not really in their database. And so when you're showing photos to them, you're getting them outside of the database. And I think that's how you're going to have a lot of success, because it's pretty hard to deny when you're looking at side-by-side comparisons of pictures, which one's nicer than the other one. And this is how it looks in the report. Again, you could go to Truly or Zillow and get photos if you wanted to, and you could do a table in Microsoft Word and just copy and paste the photos there. We make it super convenient and easy to do, but you know, you could do, this is the process I would suggest doing, is actually go to that level of detail. Look at the photos of the comps, see if there's any kind of discrepancies between your property and their property, and see if you can use that to move the needle down on adjustments on how that comp is going to be used against you at the appraisal district.
So Glenn, go back to that slide if you would. So in that report right there, the taxpayer actually would have uploaded their own picture, just take their own picture on their iPhone, right? And upload that picture on the left. And then the picture on the right, which is the comp picture, is available in the database that we have. So they just take that and drag it and put it in there, or select it, I guess?
They don't even drag, they just select it. They just say, I want to use this picture. And you can either upload pictures to the website, or we have a thing where it'll text you a link, and you can pop open that link on your phone, and that'll access your camera, and you can take a picture right from there, and it'll load into our gallery from there. So again, it's all about convenience with the way that we've done it. If you were to do it yourself, you could take a picture on your phone, email it to yourself, download it from the email maybe, and that's how you could get access. I mean, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of ways that people already know how to do that kind of stuff.
And these automatically get resized, I think I heard you say the other day.
Yeah,
we automatically. There's a file limit on what you can send into the appraisal district. So
yeah, a lot of photos sometimes screw people up because there's size limits in the files that can be uploaded to the appraisal district. And photos really grow the size of a file. And so we run everything through compression to minimize the file size so that you can really use a lot of photos to submit your evidence online. And I do think the more photos that you're using, the better, because the more photos you're using, the more focus you're putting on information you're bringing to the table. If you're not using a whole lot of photos and you're just using comps, they're just going to take those comps and enter them into their system, and they're going to be focused on what's in their computer screen instead of what's on your documentation with the photos. So that's another advantage to using photos, is it's more control over the narrative of the information being discussed. So we've talked a lot about the software, but I want to emphasize also that we coach you along the process. And we have a really good online chat and email system that a lot of people are currently using right now and have been using when appeals are out. And that's a great way to get quick information about, should I do this or should I do that? Or the appraisal district sent me their evidence. What do you think? You know, that kind of thing. So we're there to kind of coach you along the process as well, and not just provide software and say, okay, good luck. This is another example of how our coaching really helped with that. It's a combination of the coaching and software together. This guy, what he did was he filed an online protest, and he was in Collin County. When you file an online protest in Collin County, you have the option to request the appraisal district's evidence. And he selected that he wanted the appraisal district's evidence at that time. And so what they did was they have, when you request the appraisal district's evidence, they have to present that evidence to you 14 days before your ARB hearing. And so they sent him the evidence, and he found out that there was a comp on there that had a pool and that they were valuing at $4,000. And so he didn't think that looked right. And so he went into our system, and this is how he was able to use this information to his advantage. So he was noticed at $448,000. He went to our site, and we said that you should try to go for a value of $425,000. He requested the appraisal district's evidence when he filed the online protest, and they emailed him an offer at $441,000. They provided 4 comps that they were using as their evidence. So he went into our system and found those comps and entered them in. And he got exactly 441, which was the offer they gave him. So it looks good so far. But he noticed that one of the comps had a pool and he does not have a pool. So he was investigating that further. And he said, okay, that's a $12,000 pool in my neighborhood. That seems a little low. So he went and got the photo of the pool from our application and attached it as evidence. And he said, this photo is not $12,000. It looks more like $25,000. And so he's overriding their adjustment. And notice how it's decreasing the value when he's doing that. And he sees another one that has a pool. So he does the same thing and investigates that one. And he finds the pool of that one again. And what he noticed on this one was that they were only making a $4,000 adjustment for that pool. And he's like, no way, again, that's a $25,000 pool. You know, pools in my neighborhood sell for, people assign way more than $4,000 in value to it. So now he's gotten the value down from 441 to 433, but he says, okay, since the pools are an issue, what if I just remove them from the equation altogether? And now he gets a value at 431. So using the appraisal district's own evidence and adding photos showing that the pools were worth way more, the ARB panel reduced his value to 430,000. So that's the power of requesting their evidence, going the extra effort to look at photos of the comps to see if there's any angles you can work with it. And when he got done with his hearing, he chatted in with us and he said, okay, they reduced my value to 430 from 449. And he said the tips about the pool made all the difference. So we coached him on that. We said, you know, those pool values are way too low. You should override those. And he said that when the ARB heard that, they pretty much stopped listening to anything else, and they reduced his value to 430. And I like this part of it because this is a little insight into how ARB chairmen think. He said the chair actually thanked him for the concise presentation, and that the owners were on a 0-7 losing streak before my discussion. So what that is saying is that this was not a rubber stamp ARB panel, that they weren't just reducing values for anybody who came in there. I think the word, I think when he said that the chair thanked him for a concise presentation, I think that's key. Keep in mind that these ARB panel members are there all day and they're just trying to work through as many cases as they can. And so the more concise, the more honed you are, the more specific about the information you're discussing, the crisper your presentation is, the more power it has compared to everyone else in there. Most people that go in there, they don't know what's going to face them. They're seeing the appraisal district's evidence for the first time, and they're kind of stumbling around trying to gather their thoughts because they're trying to figure out, what did I just see? You know, they just went through all these comps. I'm trying to understand everything that's happening for the first time, real time, and I'm kind of on the spot, and I've got this 5-minute time limit. And they become flustered and they really don't know where to go with the argument. This guy had a plan going in there. He knew exactly what he was going to talk about. So that's why it's important to request the appraisal district's evidence, is you're going to know exactly what you're going to talk about. They cannot change that evidence once they send it to you. So there's going to be no surprises. You're going to know exactly what's going to happen in that ARB hearing when you have their evidence. And you've got 14 days to pretty much pick it apart the best you can. And so when you go in there, you can do exactly what this guy did, which is be very specific. He talked about pools and he showed pictures of a pool, and that got him the value that he wanted. This year's going to be the year of the remote appeal. The appraisal districts are begging you to submit your online protest, use the online protest system. I like the online protest system even before this year because it gives you an opportunity to, number one, file your protest. Number two, submit your evidence with that protest. And then number three, request the appraisal district's evidence, all in one process. Now that's really specific to Collin County and in Denton County. If you're in Dallas County, you're gonna have to mail in your request for the appraisal district's evidence separate from the online protest. But that's just in Dallas County. In Collin County, it's just a checkbox. You just check that box. Since there's going to be no in-person meetings, written communication is going to be very important this year. You're not going to be able to have the benefit of being able to stitch together your evidence with a conversation that you're having. So a lot of people in the past, and this worked, but they would go in there with like maybe like a manila folder. They'd have their evidence and they start discussing it. Well, you're not going to be able to go through that process this year. It's going to be done remote. And so having a well-organized and effectively communicated via written communication report is going to serve you very well this year. Doing little things, even like numbering your pages, so that if you're in a remote hearing by teleconference or you're talking to a district appraiser on the phone, you can say, turn to page 5 or turn to page 3, and they'll know exactly where to go in your packet of information. Again, on our site, PropertyTax.io, we automatically number everything for you. But if you're using Word or something like that, just add a footer in there and number the pages. Again, I go back to the executive summary. That sets the tempo of your evidence. They know exactly what you're asking for, and they know why you're asking for it. That's the only purpose of the executive summary. There's other points later on in your information where you can get into the details of the information you're presenting. But right off the bat, you just want to say, here's what I'm asking for. And in this case, a little paragraph that describes how we did that. So we're using the average of the adjusted sales price of 3 comps. They're all located in the same neighborhood as the subject, that's valuation speak for your property. The subject is your property. So they're all in the same neighborhood as the subject. All 3 comps are using the same building quality rating. We say RF12, you might say they're all the same builder by Drees Homes. The subject does not have a pool. 2 comps like the subject have a pool, and 1 comp does not have a pool. A key takeaway from this is that we do an adjusted sale price. A lot of people just do a price per square foot. I see all the time a price per square foot calculation leads people down a path that they think is going to help them, but it doesn't, because it goes back to one of my earlier slides of all the adjustments that are made. You know, a price per square foot does not make an adjustment for a pool. It doesn't make an adjustment for a comp that backs up to a green belt versus a comp that backs up to an interior lot. It doesn't make an adjustment for the condition of the property, things like that. And so price per square foot really is another major way where I see people get steered in the wrong direction. You want to use an adjusted sale price, which is what we do. That's what the appraisal district does. Jim, who's an appraiser, who's on this webinar, he does an adjusted sale price. That's just how the proper way to value a property is done, is using an adjusted sale price. So again, it's not hard to do your homework, and it makes when you do your homework, it separates you from everybody else who just files an appeal and forgets about it. When you submit evidence that's done the right way, it makes a decision maker's job really easy, or I should say a lot easier to lower the value. The biggest reward that we have with our website is when somebody has never filed an appeal and they file an appeal for the first time, and they're, now they're in the process. They've done it once you go through the process one time, you're going to see that it's really not that big of a deal, and you're going to be more prone to file protests in the future. A lot of people sit this whole process out and never do anything, never try to take control over their property tax. I'm here to encourage you to try to do something. Especially this year, get in the game if you've never filed a protest before. It's an important year to try to take financial control over that. And if you have filed a protest before in the past, I encourage you to coach other people that have never done it before. Maybe post about it on nextdoor.com, or maybe go to your Facebook neighborhood community page and post about filing a protest there. Maybe offer to help people through the process if they've never done it before. Just some pointers. I'm doing that on my local Facebook page. We have a lot of great resources that are free. You can go to help.propertytax.io and search things like homestead, and we'll tell you how you can qualify for a homestead, how to file for a late homestead exemption, where to get the documents to do that, things like that. And homestead is just one of the topics. We have all these other topics on there as well. And then we also have another website that we launched this year, PropertyTaxUniversity.com, which is kind of like an online learning course. If you're kind of new to the game, I would suggest starting with understanding your value. And if you filed a protest before and you're just kind of looking to hone your skills and gain more information about that, I would suggest going into evidence in an appeal, where we talk about things like how to move on from price per square foot and go to an adjusted sale price, things like that. We also cover exemptions. So if you're over 65 and you're thinking about moving, how the over 65 tax lien transfer is going to work for you. We cover things like that in the exemptions course. And that's all I've got for my presentation. I'm going to, Jim, while you're kind of picking up again, I'm going to look through some of these questions and see if there's anything that I need to answer.
Yeah, and I want to ask you, by the way, if Glenn wasn't doing this right now, he would be on the chat lines. And I've been watching the chat, Glenn, while you were talking. We're in pretty good shape. Brian and Adrian and our helpers have it in pretty good shape, so you can relax a little bit there. But somebody had a question. I think it was maybe Debbie said, "What if a neighborhood has little turnover?" So I'm going to go ahead and answer that while you're looking at those. The good thing about that, Debbie, is that if you don't have any comps, they don't either. And so when nobody has good data, that's a very ripe situation for getting a reduction. And so what I would do is I would go back maybe a little longer back in time than you normally would and see if there's a recent sale there. Maybe not quite so recent, but an older sale that's pretty good. And then go to a competing neighborhood. Since most of you guys that are on the webinar today are realtors, just say, if I was showing this house, what other neighborhoods would I be showing in? What other kind of product? And so look for those type of things, just like you would if you were valuing a property for sale. And so just remember that if you don't have good data, the district doesn't either, really. Glenn, you seen anything else that we haven't addressed yet?
Somebody asked in the case study that I did with how the lady knocked $13,000 off by using photos. They asked, did she have to put photos of her own property for comparison? She didn't talk about that in her article. I think that's the most impactful when you do a side-by-side comparison and you do that. However, I don't think it's required to do that, but I think it will lead to another question of, well, where's your photo of your kitchen? She said she didn't have to do that. If you don't want to do that, I shouldn't say, she didn't say one way or the other if she did that. My personal take on it is, if you think that using photos of comps and you can say that it's nicer than yours, use the photos. Obviously, if you don't want to use your own photos, I don't think that's absolutely required, but I think you are diminishing your argument if you don't include photos of your own property to do side-by-side comparison. So
I will say this, and doing the residential presentation, sometimes when Glenn gets overwhelmed, I usually do commercial, but last year he needed it was all hands on deck, and so I worked some residential for him. When you show pictures and maps, that gets their attention, and especially at the ARB level. And so they really like the maps. You know, when I went in with the report, that's the first thing they went to is the map page. And sometimes that's the only place they went. They want to make sure you were getting comps from the neighborhood. So sometimes we get chats in. I saw one yesterday from a homeowner and says, you know, your comps selection produced about 20 comps. They're all in my neighborhood, but I think they're more comparable properties outside of my neighborhood. Well, you know, and I had to tell him in so many words, you may think they are, but the district is not. They're gonna stick with the location. And so if you go in there with comps out of the neighborhood, when there are comps in your neighborhood, that's just a dead end street for the most part.
Somebody asked if
a
we're
question about
expecting
tax rates. Go ahead, Glenn.
Yeah, I was actually getting to that one. They have not. So there's a new Senate Bill 2 requires now that they have to send out a postcard, the taxing jurisdictions, to hear comments and elicit feedback. And you're absolutely right. August, September is when they're doing that. As far as I've heard, they're still trying to stick to that August, September timeline to elicit feedback. The reason I say that is because that they're going to send out an estimated certified roll this year instead of an actual certified roll this year. The certified roll is what the appraisal district typically sends out in middle of July, like July 25th or something like that. They have to certify their roll, which is they've seen 95% of the ARB cases that they're going to see. And that's what's considered a certified roll. And then that's what goes to the taxing jurisdictions so they can look at what do values look like, so that we can manipulate the tax rate to adjust to the revenue for the budgets that we have. I think this year they're going to send out an estimated tax certified roll instead of an actual certified roll. And so I've heard that they're still trying to keep to August, September. However, I wouldn't be surprised if that gets pushed back. Early on, we were being told that it could be later, that our tax bills could go out later this year. So I don't know about that yet. Right now, they seem like they're trying to keep on course, but I wouldn't be surprised if they had to delay that.
Okay. Somebody had a question about, can I go online and look at my neighbor's properties and compare those? And really, that's what a lot of people do. It gets into the equal and uniform protest, which you really didn't talk about much, and I think I know why. But I know that when you purchase one of your reports, when a taxpayer does, they get a market value report and an equal and uniform report. So could you take just a couple of minutes and explain to them what an equal and uniform report is, and can you get any traction with that?
Equal and uniform is based off of fairness, essentially. So you're exactly hitting around the concept of equal and uniform with that question, which is, how is my property valued compared to neighboring properties? And you're entitled to an equal and uniform value, meaning you can't be valued way up here when all the comps that are adjusted, and the keyword is adjusted, equal down here, the median. That would mean that you get to be lower to the level of the median of that sample of properties. And so the way that you do an equal and uniform analysis is you get properties that are similar to yours in the neighborhood or as close to you as you can. And you start making adjustments for the differences in size. Again, those additional improvements, they're gonna make all those adjustments to those properties. And then so instead of doing an adjusted sale price, because these properties don't have to sell, you're adjusting the appraisal district's market value for those properties. And so you go through the same process that you would doing an adjusted sale price, except instead of starting with the sales price, you're starting with the appraisal district's market value. And whatever those adjust to, you rank them in order. And whatever the median is, that's what's called the median level of, that's the median adjusted value. And if you're higher than the median adjusted value, then you've got a good case for equal and uniform. The problem that I see a lot of people run into with this is that, number one, they're doing the price per square foot, because when you do price per square foot, you're not doing all the adjustments that you need to do, that the appraisal district is going to do. And then the second is that a lot of people pick and choose comps in the neighborhood. So sometimes properties have a lot of really similar, if you're in a master plan community, there's going to be a lot of properties that are similar to you. And a lot of people will just kind of go through and pick out the ones that are valued low and try to use that as a basis. The problem with that is that the appraisal district can come right back and pick out the ones that are high, and now it becomes a wash. And so really what you have to do to make a real equal and uniform case is you have to consider, in an unbiased way as best you can, what are all the properties that are similar to me, make all the adjustments for all of those, and then rank them in order, and what's that median. And if you really get an honest median, instead of just picking and choosing, if you get an honest median that is lower than your property value, then you've got a case for equal and uniform. So having said all of that, in Collin County, I really don't see a lot of great movement using equal and uniform. Maybe a couple of $1,000s off in the value, which will save you minimal amount in tax dollars. So I focus more on market sales for that reason, and especially in Collin County. I think you get a lot more movement. And also keep in mind that if they have your property overvalued, meaning like that they've overshot what the market is in your neighborhood, and you're only looking at other properties in your neighborhood that haven't sold, well, they've probably overshot the value on those properties as well. So now you're just comparing too high values to your too high value, instead of looking at this sale over here and that sale over there that indicates lower values. So,
okay.
Yeah.
But when you protest, though, you do advise people to check both market value and unequal, right?
Yes, do both.
Because I know sometimes in Collin it can be a little confusing.
Right.
We actually had a client that checked equal and uniform, and he actually had a case on market, and he had a great case, but they wouldn't hear it because he didn't check the right box. So
yeah, it's confusing how they have it set up in their system. When you file an online protest in Collin County, it's like a drop-down box to select what's the reason you're filing the appeal. And you'll have several reasons for that. The two ones that we tell people to focus on are I think that my value is inaccurate, which is saying that I think my market value is too high, and also select that I think my value is unfair. A lot of people go through and they just check, oh, my value is unfair, because they're looking at taxes and they think it's not fair that I'm being taxed this high. And so they think that I'm gonna dispute the case based on it being unfair. But what that does is you're saying, okay, now I'm only disputing it based on equal and uniform only. And so if you try to use sales to get the value lowered, they'll say, well, you didn't dispute the value based on inaccurate, you disputed the value based on unfair. And so recent sales aren't allowed to be heard for a reduction. We're only going to look at equal and uniform evidence for that. So be sure and check both reasons and of why you're filing the appeal is both inaccurate market value and the value is unfair, equal and uniform. Both of them is very important to select both.
Okay. And so I wanted to ask you, go back to your report for a second, because I know it's got some very powerful stuff in it. What does that report cost, and how much of a value reduction do they get? Do they have to get to recover that cost? And I know there's a guarantee with it. So
Right.
Can you go over that a little bit?
Yeah, our report costs $75, and we'll tell you with our instant free analysis that you saw earlier if we recommend making that purchase. There's a lot of people that go to our site and we actually say we don't recommend making the purchase because we don't think we've got the evidence to make it work for you. And we do guarantee that you'll get a reduction of at least $5,000 off of your value, or we'll refund the money. And so there's really no risk into purchasing the product if we recommend it for you, because if you don't get a reduction of at least $5,000, then we'll just refund your whole purchase on it. So there's we make it a risk-free offering essentially.
Okay. You learn something every time you do one of these. I didn't know the $5,000. You've changed that from last year. It was just no reduction at all, right? Now
Yeah,
you have
we
to get
changed
the $5,000, which more than covers the cost, right?
Right. That ties into the question of, does it cover the cost? So that if you got a $5,000 reduction, that would roughly cover the cost of the report. We usually don't recommend the report unless you can get at least 10,000 off. So we're looking to at least give you a double of what you would spend on a report in savings, at least that. A lot of people save, our median savings in Collin County is $450 in taxes. So people spend $75 and they save $450 in taxes.
Okay. Yeah, I knew that stat was out there. Also, the other stat that I wanted to go back to is what percentage of the users actually get that kind of reduction?
It's over, in Collin County, it's like 85% success rate.
Okay.
Right. And
okay.
and we're trying to bridge that obviously to get even better, but 85% is well above other groups of agents that would file or just regular homeowners that file. So it's a very high success rate with that, again, because we're so accurate with the information that it mirrors their systems. Okay. So yeah.
Go ahead, Debbie.
You're providing this report that the homeowner will use in the protest, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so there's two. When you sign up and you make a purchase, we have what's called our express report, and that's available for immediate download. So it's super easy just to, within a minute of signing up, you have the evidence that you would need to submit for an online protest. We do have really cool features to customize that, however, and we do highly encourage that. So when you were looking at earlier in some of the videos of doing the photos of side-by-side comparisons and where you can select your own comps, that's how you can customize the report. And so if you want to go to that level, you can, or where you can just make it your own report, just customize it. Or if you're just looking for something really simple and easy, you can just use our express report, which is also highly effective.
And if they're not that great with the technology, I've looked over in the chat, and that's what you're there for, basically, is a lifeline.
Right.
To get the pictures in there and get the report looking good. So we didn't mention this, but most of the people on this webinar are Coldwell Banker real estate agents, and most of them will probably sign up as a partner. And if you are a taxpayer and you're using the link that Debbie or one of the agents has given you to get into our system, you get a $10 discount off of your report. So that's good. And I will just say this to the agents that are on right now. We're going to end the webinar here shortly, but after we end the webinar, if you'll stay on, I'll walk you through how to sign up as a partner. It takes about 2 minutes to do. It's really very easy. So let's see.
Hey,
Do we
Jim,
have
I
any
wanted to
questions,
answer.
Debbie, that we
Yeah,
haven't addressed?
I wanted to answer one question I saw from
Okay.
Ryan. He asked if you can use your contract sales price as a method to protest. For example, purchased the house last year for an amount that's higher than what or lower than what the appraisal district has it on for this year. Is that a strong argument? I would say that's an extremely strong argument. If you paid less than what they have you on for, just get your HUD-1 from the closing documents and submit that. Even better if you have the appraisal from it. So HUD-1 and appraisal is great. HUD-1 alone is still really strong. So they should have no problem lowering it to what you paid for it. There are some outlier instances where maybe it was a divorce or something like that, and they don't think that that is a quote unquote qualified market sale. You might get pushback on that, which is again why I recommend the appraisal in addition to the HUD-1. That's golden if you have that. But the HUD-1 alone, we see tons and tons of success with that.
And that's not if they buy a brand new home that was under construction in some phase their first year, correct? That because they pay on unimproved and then it's going to be assessed. So do they bring their?
It's really so you're looking at what was the condition of the property on January 1st. So if it was partially complete on January 1st, so like let's say that you have a new construction that you closed in March on, but it was 80% complete on January 1st, they're likely going to have that lower than what you paid for it because it's going to be 80% complete and you bought 100% complete property. So yeah, pay attention to things like that. And also the land value could still be considered what's in builder inventory, and builder inventory gets a 20% discount on land than an individual owner. So a lot of people like to compare my land value in new developments. They like to compare my land value to this home over here, their land value. Well, if you owned your property before January 1st, you were not afforded the builder inventory on that. So you're going to have the full value of the land applied to your property. Whereas if the property sold after January 1st that you're looking at, it was still held by the builder, they're going to have what's called that builder inventory applied to the land value. And that's why you see discrepancies in land values in new construction neighborhoods.
Yes. And also there's a third option, correct, where y'all can do all of this for the client.
Yes, that's called our gold service level. And we do handle everything A to Z for the client. We charge 40% of the savings. So there, again, it's risk-free to use that. We do have to qualify the property for that service though, because we have limited time resources with our agents. And so the best thing to do is just go through the instant and free analysis, and we'll tell you if that property qualifies for the full representation. So we've got great tools. I don't like to say one package is do it yourself, because I go back to the coaching. I think it's a hybrid of you're going to file the appeal and kind of do some of the legwork, but you've got the benefit of a lifeline with our expertise just right there to help you strategize. So it's really not fair to call it do it yourself. That's why I call it hybrid. Or you've got the option of just hiring us outright to handle the whole thing for you.
Okay, somebody has a very good question here, and it has to do with the dates of the comps. She wants to know, or he wants to know, how up to date does my evidence have to be? For example, if my hearing gets pushed back because of COVID, what if my sales are dated? I think is what they're getting at. So I don't know if you covered that. I didn't. If you did, I didn't see that. But what are the dates?
Are we kind of dealing mainly with the Collin County crowd here?
Well, for sure, let's address Collin, but in general.
Okay. Because they have that answer really differs depending on the county that you're in, because they all have different procedures or guidelines with that. So in Collin County, there again, I go back to you're valuing the properties of January 1st of 2020. So you're working with a locked-in data set. The further you get away from a hearing date, that's not going to change the sales that you would use that are relevant to value the property on January 1st. So if a property, let's just say, as an extreme example, your hearing gets pushed back to December, you're not going to be able to use a comp that sold in September to value that property, because you're trying to, again, value the property as of January 1st of 2020. In Collin, they won't actually let you and this is true with both the appraisal district and the appraisal review board, they will not listen to comps that have sold after January 31st. So if you just saw a property that sold in and we actually had one thrown out last year where comps sold like February 5th, and they said that's beyond our January 31st cutoff date, and so we're not going to hear it. So you're really locked into trying to within a set of a parameter of dates for the comps. And in Collin County, it's ideal to choose comps that sold in February of 2019 to January 31st of 2020. That's the sweet spot of the data set that you want to work with to pull comps from. If you're going further back than that, if you're going further back than February of 2019, you run the risk of them saying that's too dated. If you go beyond January 31st, this again is just for Collin County, then they're saying that we won't consider that. In other counties like Denton, they can go beyond January 31st for that. But I think if your hearing gets pushed back, you don't have to worry about including a comp that sold in February and worry about it being dated if you're outside of Collin County, because that's still very relevant for values of January 1st of 2020.
Okay. Debbie, anything we haven't covered yet that we should?
There was a gentleman asking something about filing something in Tarrant County at the very beginning.
Okay.
And he was asking if he was done. I don't.
Yeah, that in Tarrant County, they have a you settle type thing, and I did answer that for him privately, but he got an offer from them, and the offer was to his liking, and he said, "So am I done?" And I said, "There should be a way for you to accept that offer, and make sure that you do accept the offer."
Yeah.
And that's the case with all the districts. They'll give you an offer, and there's not a lot of back and forth with that automated type thing, unless you can get into where you can talk to an appraiser. So I'm going to kind of sum up, unless we have, Glenn, is there anything else that you wanted to cover, or Debbie? I was kind of taking some notes, Glenn, as you were going through, and this is what I got out of this, the high points. Number one, provide an executive summary. Let them know up front what you're looking for. That's the first question they have is, where are you? Where are we? Let's see if we can make a deal. Because that's what it boils down to. Number two, ask for their evidence. Very important. It's like you've got their playbook and they can't change it. Or if you're playing baseball, you know exactly what the next 4 pitches are going to be. They can't change it. So ask for their evidence. Number three, use maps in your presentation. Number four, use pictures if they're helpful. Sometimes that doesn't help. Sometimes your property's knocked out, but pictures are very helpful if it applies. Number four, have a concise report and make your presentation precise. Don't ramble. Number six, and I think Glenn emphasized this, but it's even more so this year, number your pages. Because if you have a telephone conference with the ARB, you want to make sure that they're looking where you want them to look. You don't want them flipping their pages trying to find out where you are. So tell them, I'm going to go to page 5. I'm going to give you a second to get to page 5. Is everybody on page 5? Okay, second paragraph down, or look at the chart. And the last thing I said is chat in for help. You've got a coach out there, and we're here to help you, and we want you to be successful. So if you are an agent and want to stay on for a few minutes, I'll show you how to sign up as a partner. It's a great way to stay in touch with your clients and provide a great value add to your clients. And so it only takes a couple of minutes. If you want to stay on, I'll show you how to do that. Otherwise, I think we'll sign off.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to stop the recording, but I'm going to stay on for a few minutes and see if there's any people that want to sign up as a partner. I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so if you are a, let's see if I can tell, we still have 20 some odd people on here. So